So, what happens when your property is used to commit a crime, but you're completely innocent? I mean, can the state just take away your livelihood for something you didn't even know was happening? We're going to dive into a Supreme Court case that tackles this exact nightmare scenario.
I want you to really imagine this for a second. You own a business. One of your employees takes a company vehicle and, completely without your knowledge, uses it to move illegal drugs. The police catch them. You're innocent. But now, the authorities have seized your incredibly valuable asset. Should you be punished for a crime you didn't commit? That's the huge dilemma right at the heart of our story today.
All right, so let's meet Denash. He's a truck owner. And for him, a totally ordinary business day spiraled into a massive legal battle that went all the way to the nation's highest court. So here's how it all went down. It starts with a pretty standard job. Denash's 14-wheeler truck gets hired to haul a huge load of iron sheets. But on July 14th, the whole trip comes to a screeching halt. Police in Nadu pull the truck over, and during the search, bam, they find illegal drugs on the crew. And just like that, Denash's lorry, his entire livelihood is seized. And listen, this wasn't just a tiny amount. The police found a total of 6 kilograms of ganja. Turns out the 4 crew members had each hidden about 1.5 kilos. So we're not talking about a minor mistake here. This was a serious offense under India's narcotics laws. Now this right here is the absolute key to the whole story. After the investigation, the police, the prosecution, everyone concluded that Denash, the owner of the truck, had nothing to do with it. He wasn't in on some conspiracy, he had no idea what his employees were up to, he was not named as an accused person, and yet, his truck was still locked up in police custody. You know, you'd think that if you're the innocent owner, getting your property back would be pretty straightforward, right? Well, for Denash, he was about to get trapped in a really frustrating legal maze. And this is where it gets just wild. So Denash first goes to a special court to try and get his truck back while the trial for his employees is pending. The court says, nope. Their reasoning, under the main drug law, the vehicle could be permanently confiscated at the end of the trial, so they weren't going to release it temporarily. Okay, so he doesn't give up. He appeals to the high court. But they also say no, and for a completely different reason. They basically said, hey, a new set of rules from 2022 took this power away from us courts and gave it to this administrative group called the Drug Disposal Committee. Can you believe it? 2 courts, 2 totally different rejections. He was just stuck. So to really get what happens next, we need to talk about this key legal idea, subordinate legislation. Think of it this way. Parliament passes a big primary law. That's the act. Then a government department creates smaller rules to help put that act into practice. But here's the thing, the most important thing. These smaller rules can't contradict the parent act. They are subordinate to it. This simple principle is the entire key to unlocking the Supreme Court's final decision. So, after hitting a brick wall in 2 different courts, Denash took his fight all the way to the top. It was up to the Supreme Court to finally bring some clarity to this legal mess. The Supreme Court went right back to the source. The parent law, the NDPS Act. And just look at this key phrase, right here. It says a vehicle can be confiscated unless the owner can prove it was used without their knowledge or connivance. That is a massive built-in protection for innocent owners, written right into the main law. So the court's logic here was just beautifully simple and clear. First things first, the main law is supreme. Those 2022 rules the High Court was talking about, they're subordinate. They can't just wipe out a right that was granted by an act of parliament. Second, as we just saw, the act itself explicitly protects innocent owners and gives them a right to argue their case in court. Third, this means the courts absolutely still have the power to decide on the temporary release of property. And finally, you put it all together. Since Denash wasn't even accused of a crime, making him wait who knows how long to get his truck back is just plain unjust. And with that, the Supreme Court did what the lower courts couldn't or wouldn't. They completely set aside the High Court's judgment and ordered that the truck be returned to Denash immediately while the trial against his employees continued. I mean, what a huge sigh of relief. A massive victory for an innocent owner who was just caught in this legal nightmare. Okay, so Denash got his truck back. That's great for him. But why should this case matter to the rest of us? Well, it's because the court's decision really reinforces some fundamental principles that protect all property owners. This ruling really hammers home a few core ideas. First, the main law passed by Parliament is always king. Second, taking away your property for good is a decision for a judge, not some committee. Third, you always have the right to be heard in court. And maybe most important of all, the law is designed to punish the guilty,
not innocent people whose property was simply misused without their knowledge.
And that really leaves us with this final thought. A case like Denash's highlights this constant balancing act in any justice system. Of course, we need tough laws to fight serious crimes like drug trafficking, but how do we make sure those same laws don't end up punishing people who are completely innocent? This ruling shows us the answer. By sticking to the core principles of justice, making sure courts have the final say, and never ever forgetting the human side of the law.